101 miles per hour. That number alone would be enough to silence a stadium. Enough to make a veteran catcher's hand sting through the leather. Enough to make a cleanup hitter, a man paid millions of dollars specifically to handle pitches like this, look foolish in front of 40,000 people. But 101 miles per hour means something completely different when the man throwing it also hit 44 home runs last season. When the same arm that just delivered a blazing fastball at the outer edge of human capability will, in a matter of days, pick up a bat and terrorize an entirely different pitcher. When the body generating that velocity is the same body that leads the league in slugging percentage. When the mind calculating grip pressure, release angle, and spin rate is the same mind simultaneously tracking pitch sequencing from the opposite side of the plate. 101 miles per hour from Shohei Ohtani is not just a velocity reading. It is a statement. And on the evening that number first appeared on the radar gun, the evening that 7 strikeouts piled up like evidence in a case being built against the entire concept of human limitation, the legends of this sport did not reach for statistics or historical comparisons. They reached for honesty. Shohei is unstoppable. 3 words. No qualifications. No footnotes. From men who had spent their entire careers believing that everyone, eventually, could be stopped. This is the story of what happened when they were proven wrong. There is a moment in every elite pitching performance when the crowd shifts. Not from quiet to loud. That happens on strikeouts, on diving catches, on walk-off moments. This is a different shift, subtler, more collective. It is the moment when everyone in the stadium, from the most casual fan to the most experienced scout, simultaneously understands that they are watching something they will not see again for a very long time. That moment arrived in the 3rd inning. The count was 1-1. The hitter had seen 2 pitches, a splitter that dove off the bottom of the zone, and a fastball that had already registered at 98 miles per hour. He had handled both with discipline. He had not chased. He had not been fooled. He was, by any reasonable measure, one of the better hitters in the lineup, and he was doing his job. Then came the 3rd pitch. The arm speed looked identical to the previous fastball. The release point was the same. The initial trajectory was the same. Everything the hitter's brain had catalogued across the first 2 pitches said, "This is the same pitch, you have seen it, you know where it is going." The radar gun said 101. The hitter's swing arrived in the correct location approximately 40 milliseconds after the ball had already passed through it and buried itself in the catcher's mitt. 7 strikeouts would follow across the remainder of the outing. But it was that single pitch, that 101-mile-per-hour declaration delivered in a moment when the hitter had every reason to feel prepared, that established the terms of the evening. Ohtani was not pitching to compete tonight. He was pitching to demonstrate something. To understand why that velocity reading sent a current through the baseball world, you need to understand what producing it costs. A starting pitcher who throws 101 miles per hour is a rare creature. The physical requirements are extreme, not just raw strength, but a specific combination of hip rotation speed, shoulder external rotation, elbow extension timing, and fingertip force application that only a small number of human beings on the planet can produce consistently without destroying their arm in the process. Those pitchers, the pure velocity pitchers, the specialists, build their entire physical existence around protecting and maximizing that one capability. Their training, their recovery, their nutrition, their sleep, everything is organized around the arm. Ohtani's arm is not the center of his physical existence. It cannot be. Because the same body producing 101 miles per hour on the mound needs to also produce elite bat speed at the plate. The same shoulder generating that fastball also needs to rotate through a hitting plane with enough force to drive baseballs over outfield walls at a rate that leads the league. The same forearm, the same wrist, the same set of muscles and tendons and connective tissue, doing 2 jobs that, in any other human body in professional baseball, belong to 2 completely different people. The conventional wisdom in sports science holds that this kind of dual demand creates compromise. That the body, stretched across two elite physical requirements, will eventually find a ceiling in both, a point where neither role can reach its true maximum because the other role is always consuming resources. Ohtani found that ceiling and kept going. The 101 mile/hour reading is not just a velocity number. It is proof that the compromise did not happen. That somewhere in the training methodology, the recovery protocols, the nutritional architecture that Ohtani has spent years constructing around himself, he found a way to give both roles everything they needed without robbing either one. That is not supposed to be possible. Not all strikeout performances are the same. There are strikeouts built on pure velocity, pitchers who simply throw the ball faster than the hitter can react. There are strikeouts built on deception, pitchers whose release points and tunneling create visual illusions that make hittable pitches look like balls and unhittable pitches look like strikes. There are strikeouts built on sequencing, pitchers who use early counts to plant information in a hitter's brain and then, later in the at-bat, weaponize that information against them. Ohtani's 7 strikeouts that evening contained all 3 categories. The first 2 came on pure velocity. Hitters who had prepared for a pitcher operating in the mid to upper 90s simply could not adjust in real time to a fastball that had moved an additional 3 miles per hour beyond their preparation. The third and fourth came on the splitter, Ohtani's most psychologically devastating pitch. Not because it is the fastest or the most technically complex, but because it requires the hitter to make a decision based on incomplete information. The pitch looks like a fastball until it doesn't. By the time the hitter's brain receives the signal that the ball is dropping out of the zone, the commitment to swing has already been made. The result is a swing at a pitch that lands in the dirt, not because the hitter made a poor decision, but because the hitter made a correct decision based on false data. The 5th and 6th strikeouts came in situations where Ohtani had established enough context earlier in the at-bat to make a slower pitch, something in the upper 80s, play as a genuine weapon. Hitters who were geared for 101 simply could not decelerate their timing quickly enough. The 7th was perhaps the most revealing. Full count. Runner on second. The moment when many pitchers retreat to their most reliable pitch, their comfort zone, the thing they trust most under pressure. Ohtani threw a fastball, but not to the location anyone expected. Not the power zone. Not the strikeout location that the data said this hitter struggled with most. Instead, he placed it precisely on the inner half, at a height that forced the hitter to commit early, at a velocity that made any late adjustment impossible. It was not a pitch born from a computer printout. It was a pitch born from presence, from reading something in the hitter's stance, in the way he was loading, in the microsecond before the pitch left Ohtani's hand. 7 strikeouts. 7 different stories. Each one a chapter in the same argument. There is a specific silence that falls over experienced baseball people when they watch something they cannot categorize. Not the silence of boredom. Not the silence of confusion. The silence of recalibration, of a mind that has spent decades building a framework for understanding the sport suddenly encountering something that does not fit inside that framework. That silence fell over several of the most accomplished names in baseball history on the evening of Ohtani's 101 mile/hour performance. Men who had stood on major league mounds for decades. Men who had faced the best hitters in the world and found ways to get them out, night after night, year after year. Men whose understanding of pitching was not theoretical, it was physical, experiential, earned through 10,000 innings of professional competition. They watched the radar gun. They watched the movement. They watched the sequencing, the way Ohtani built each at-bat like a sentence, with the strikeout as the period he had planned from the first word. And one by one, they arrived at the same conclusion. Not reluctantly. Not with the strained enthusiasm of someone trying to be gracious. With the specific directness of people who have spent their entire lives saying exactly what they mean about baseball, and who had no reason now to be anything other than completely honest. Shohei is unstoppable. Not, Shohei is very good. Not, Shohei is having a remarkable stretch. Not, Shohei is among the best we've seen. Unstoppable. A word that people who have spent careers stopping batters, and being stopped by pitchers, use sparingly, because they know better than anyone what it actually means. It means, we have looked at this from every angle we know. We have applied everything we understand about pitching and hitting and the human limits of both. And we cannot identify the mechanism by which this ends. That is what those 3 words carried. Not praise. A confession. Step back from the velocity. Step back from the strikeouts. Step back from the reactions of legends. Look at the full picture. The man who threw 101 miles per hour and collected 7 strikeouts that evening will, within days, step into a batter's box and be expected to perform at an all-star level with a bat in his hands. He will face elite pitchers, men who have spent their entire professional lives developing the single skill of getting hitters out, and he will be expected to hit those pitchers at a rate that makes him one of the most feared offensive presences in the sport. He will do both. He has been doing both. The numbers across the season confirm it without ambiguity. No other player in the history of professional baseball has sustained this combination at this level for this long. That is not sentiment. That is the factual conclusion of every statistical analysis that has been applied to the historical record. What this means, practically, is that opposing teams face a problem that has no established solution. If you build your game plan around Ohtani the hitter, if you construct your pitching strategy for the days he appears in the lineup as a designated hitter or outfielder, you are unprepared for Ohtani the pitcher. The 2 versions of this player require completely different preparation, completely different tactical approaches, completely different psychological frameworks. And yet they are the same person. Showing up to the same ballpark. In the same uniform. The teams that have struggled most against Ohtani are not the ones that failed to prepare. They are the ones that prepared for one version of him and encountered the other. That is the strategic reality of the true two-way player, and Ohtani is, at this moment, the only person in the world who fully occupies that definition. In Japan, the velocity was not reported in miles per hour. It was reported in kilometers, 162 kilometers per hour, and the number landed differently there. Not just because of unit conversion. Because of history. Japanese baseball has produced elite pitching for generations. The country has a deep and sophisticated relationship with the craft of pitching, with mechanics, with control, with the intellectual dimensions of reading hitters and building at-bats. Japanese pitching culture has always prized precision over raw power. The ability to locate a pitch within centimeters of its intended target, to change speeds with enough fluidity to make a 140 km per hour fastball low. 155 km per hour, these are the virtues that Japanese baseball has traditionally celebrated. 162 km per hour from a Japanese pitcher, in a major league game, against a major league lineup, on a night that also produced 7 strikeouts, this hit Japan as something beyond baseball achievement. It hit as national affirmation. As evidence that the values of precision, preparation, and relentless self-improvement that sit at the core of Japanese athletic culture had produced something the world had never seen before. Sports broadcasters who had maintained professional composure through years of Ohtani highlights struggled to maintain it that night. Not because the velocity was unexpected, those who had followed Ohtani's career knew the fastball lived in this range. But because 162 km per hour in that context, in that performance, against that level of competition, felt like a completion. Like something that had been building for a very long time had finally arrived at its destination. 101 miles per hour. 162 km per hour. 7 strikeouts. Legends without words. Numbers accumulate. Records are posted. Highlights are clipped and shared and watched millions of times. But here is what the numbers cannot fully capture. The silence that fell over experienced baseball people when they watched that fastball move. The specific quality of that silence, not empty, but full. Full of recalibration. Full of the quiet, unsettling work of revising a lifelong understanding of what a baseball player can be. Because what Shohei Ohtani is doing, what he did on that mound, at that velocity, with that precision, while carrying the full dual weight of a two-way career at the highest level of professional sport, does not have a category yet.